Hi everyone and welcome to our Worldwide Voices, and I want to introduce a very special guest, um, Kerry Cassidy, a friend of ours. We meet Kerry usually about once or twice a year. It's always lovely to meet up with Kerry, and thank you so much, Kerry, for joining us today at quite short notice, only a few days' notice. We really appreciate you joining us here today. So I'll just do your bio. So it's honour to welcome Kerry Cassidy, founder of Project Camelot, a platform devoted to exploring hidden truths, human potential, and the awakening of global consciousness. For nearly 2 decades, Kerry has interviewed whistleblowers, researchers, and visionaries from around the world, illuminating what lies beyond conventional narratives and inviting us to see our world through a higher lens. With a background in film, business, and intuitive exploration, her work bridges the realms of truth-seeking and spiritual awakening. Through her broadcasts, conferences, and writings, Kerry inspires us to trust our inner knowing and to remember who we truly are. That's all very close to my heart, actually. So please join me in welcoming Kerry Cassidy. Thank you, Kerry. Kerry, you're on mute at the moment again.
See, okay. So that's not my bio, but it was sounded very nice anyway. I mean, it's nothing about me. That's just not. I don't think I wrote that, so I don't know who wrote that or where it came from, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, so I basically give myself a little brief introduction for those that might not know. I'm an investigative journalist, documentary filmmaker. I've been doing this for 20 years now. Actually, just had my 20th anniversary, I guess you might call it, around November 5th. And so I specialize in interviewing whistleblowers from above top secret, but I also investigate conspiracies of all kinds, no matter what they are, really, and especially focused on, outer space, the paranormal, secret space programs, and military whistleblowers, and all walks of life, really. And during COVID, for example, I interviewed doctors, alternative doctors primarily, but some more mainstream. And I got my YouTube channel at that time deleted after being on YouTube since the beginning of YouTube, actually, which is close around 17, 18, 19 years, whatever it was. And that was for one sentence that one of my whistleblowers, Dr. Robert Steele, said one sentence in the middle of a video about COVID, and that was the end of it. So then that was in March of 2021. So then I went on, and my head is actually cut off in my view. I hope it's not cut off for the audience. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing here, but anyway, just saying. So just wanted to say that I worked in Hollywood for 20 years, and then I worked at JPL as a contractor, Jet Propulsion Lab, which is part of NASA. Got quite an education while I was working there, and was there as a contractor for around 2 years, helping them with media, and also went to graduate school during that time, and film and television, and so on and so forth. So that's my bio. Today, I'm going to be talking about 3IAtlas and all the research I've been doing, because I've been very much focused on this. And so just wanted to say that. I'm not sure, are we doing a Q&A, or am I just speaking, or what's happening here?
So if you're okay to just speak and share what you know, and then after about 45 minutes, then we can turn into a Q&A. Because I know people will have questions for you, but I, for one, would love to learn all that you know about 3IAtlas, because I've been watching videos and information on this. I've been following it too. It's very interesting.
Okay, right. So what I want to do here is actually share my screen. Let's see if this works. Sharing. Could someone turn my sharing on? Because I do have photographs to show. So it'd be very important to show those photographs. Okay. Okay, not sure what's going on here. Open system settings. Zoom on. Sorry about this. This is a new computer. I tried to set everything up, but of course, quit and reopen. Okay, so let me just see if this is going to work now, so I don't have to quit. Share screen, because I really do want to show these pictures. That's working, I think. Allow. Can you see that? Oh, what
Yes.
happened?
Yes,
Oh,
we can.
oh, okay. I thought maybe I lost the sound. All right. So you can see that. So generally speaking, let me just say first and foremost that it was said to be discovered July 1st of this year, 2025, but that's not true. It actually was discovered, if you want to call it discovered, by more than one location on the Earth that and that was in earlier months, more like I think April of 2025, but some people were aware of it before that. And of course, the secret space program with Solar Warden, it would have been aware much sooner than that. So Solar Warden, I don't know whether people are familiar with Solar Warden. This is an earlier photograph of it, by the way. And the reason I like this is because it basically shows you what I think is Solar Warden, the Solar Warden ships that have decided to escort it through our solar system. And they just appeared one day around it. No one talks about them. And I have to say that I am part of a news group with Richard C. Hoagland and David Sereda. David Sereda is a well-known astronomer, quite a brilliant guy. He was sort of selected in college to get into the aerospace community and worked for several, I guess, high-profile people. And he works closely with Richard C. Hoagland at this time, who is a former NASA scientist, who I interviewed many years ago, more than once, actually. And anytime I say I've interviewed somebody, you can go to the front page of my website, and there's a huge search bar, and just enter the first or last name. That's the best way to get the most, number of names and stuff back. Anyway, so you can go there to watch that. And it is worth it to know who Richard C. Hoagland is, because he's being stopped. He does a weekend show, usually on Teams, I'm told. I was supposed to join it ever since I joined this news group, but he's been locked down, and supposedly all his internet connections and everything goes down on the weekends whenever he's supposed to do his show. So during this whole time, we're having a massive blockout of information. NASA, of course, when we had the very convenient shutdown of our government, NASA was shut down. So then they couldn't supposedly communicate with the people. Now, of course, none of that's true, because they could communicate anytime they want. But some reason they've used this excuse to not communicate. So they haven't been communicating, actually, even when we had access, which was during the month of July for a while, part of August, and then it went dark. And then it was dark for, and this means the space community, NASA and the space community, even around the world. There were no pictures coming forward during a number of weeks during those months as well. And then very conveniently, as it got closer and closer to Mars, and then about to go behind the sun, is when the shutdown happened and made it very convenient for there to be no information coming out. Now it's coming out. It came out from behind the sun around the, I think it was November 3rd or October 29th, one of those dates. And it did what's called perihelion. and has supposedly been visible, except they're always lying. And there are lots of fake photos. And what some people may not know, that I have also some, besides whistleblower connections on this, I have John Leonard Walson, who is actually a good friend of ours. And he is a master astronomer, as you may know, in England, and used to work for the Queen on secret projects and so on. So he's a master photographer, but he has these huge telescopes, which I've actually seen in person. And I've worked with him. He comes to our Awake and Aware most every year, and he brings one of his huge telescopes on the back of his truck and tries to do sightings one of the nights for people of UFOs, because anytime you point a camera at the sky, we've got UFOs. And I'm going to assume that you guys know more than maybe you do know. So I don't know what your level of I know you're dealing with Simon and Becky, and I'm assuming that and I think you've been operational for about a few years, so you must be up to speed on all of this. So I don't want to treat you like you don't know anything, but I also don't want to leave people out in the cold. If there's a question later on, you can ask me, but I'll just speed through all this because there's tons of information. But it's actually fun. It's like a fun mystery as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it does piss me off that they are blocking us, but it's actually indicating just how much our news and our information worldwide is controlled. Totally, totally controlled. And even my colleagues in this field, and even the news group, believe it or not, where some of my colleagues are on the news group with me, Richard C. Hoagland and David Sereda and others, Robert Morningstar, in case you know his name. So it's kind of a select group of people. I don't even know. I just got invited on it. So I wasn't on it in the past, but I guess there are a lot of scientists. And these people don't talk. So this is some weird thing that's going on that I think more people should be aware of it. Even when there's news groups, and even when they don't have anything to do with outer space and 3IAtlas, a lot of times people don't talk. And I'm on other news groups where they just don't talk. Every once in a while, they'll post a video or something, very innocuous, that where it doesn't really relate to them all that much. And they are very careful not to argue. So one of the things I notice is that, because I'm very open, as you might know, and then it's just weird that they're not talking. Okay. So I have brought that up, and they're afraid that, I'm on, I guess you might call 107s, or have been. See, you never know when you're blocked and when you're not blocked, but he did block me from his Telegram. A guy operates the Telegram for him, supposedly, but he even talks about in the third person about himself. But in case you don't know that, 107 does have a Telegram now. He didn't always, okay, but he posts there pretty regular. And you can always tell it's him because of his references and various things, if you know him well enough. So just saying that. And then they came out and publicly banned me from the chat room in his channel, just saying. So they're very afraid of me. Because I like to tell the truth. I guess a lot of people don't like to tell the truth, so I don't know why, but anyway. So now I'm going to go back and give you some more pictures. And these are just, some have been around for a while. So I was talking about John Walson, so I want to get back to that. So I think that's on the screen. Now this, wait, stop share. I have to do that. Hold on a second. Try this again. Okay, one of the things about 3IAtlas is that when it first came forward, what is it doing? Okay, it keeps flipping to the other image, even though I stopped sharing it. Now I'm trying to share this other one. So stop share again. Let's try this one more time. I hope it's not going to keep doing this kind of weird stuff. So this is screens, documents, advanced. Oh, God. All right. I'm going to have to figure something out, but I'll talk to you guys instead. So what happened was John Walson's telescopes all this time can capture 3IAtlas. When it supposedly went behind the sun, that wasn't actually true. And on top of it, we have SOHO and other satellites on the other side of where the sun is, okay, when it's supposedly the side that we don't see, supposedly. So just saying that, again, more lies, okay? So people are not getting the right information. Even there's AI videos out there, and I watch them on purpose to see what they're up to and found that they are lying to people, okay? So just want to say that it's too bad that they do lie. Now, there's a lot of good information in some of the AI videos. So you can't, in essence, throw the baby out with the bathwater, as the saying goes. What I think you need to do is keep an open mind. Just go ahead and listen, because they do some thought-provoking questions and various things on those AI videos. But sometimes they will slip in untrue things. Okay. So you just need to beware. And if you're not up to speed and you haven't been following this, you're probably going to fall for some of the deception. But as you spend more time, this is just if you want to get more deeply into this. Now, there's no doubt whatsoever that this is a craft. So 3IAtlas is a craft. It's behaving like a craft. And although it does some weird things that craft are capable of doing, but for some reason it's not doing. So I just wanted to say first, let me finish the Walson thing. So because John Walson thinks he's going to be arrested or worse, killed, and he was kidnapped as a child and went through all this terror and all these trauma. Then he did work for the the Queen and the King for many years, as I say, gathering information. You could say in surveillance, let's put it in a general term. His telescope can capture, I've been with him when he's captured, he actually can get the surface of Saturn, very close on the moon, close on Mars, and also he's famous for seeing the craft next to the sun. That was on Rents, all those beautiful photographs of these amazing craft right next to the sun. So that there is a common agreement that craft do go next to the sun and get fuel. So that pertains, I'm sorry if I jump around, but I'm trying to get all of this in here. So that pertains to the fact that we tried to shut it down. So we tried to kill it or destroy it. 3IAtlas, I mean, early on, with a CME directed either probably by our space program in collusion with some aliens. So it was aimed directly at the craft. And this was obvious and even shown to the world. And the craft did what I call, it swallowed it. It basically was unharmed. It actually kind of liked it, apparently, and it probably got fuel from it, as they do when they go close to the sun anyway. So we failed miserably at that effort. All right. And there's reason. I also interviewed an investigator called Keith Hunter, who talks about the earthquakes that you've been seeing and the various things going on with the earth that are also, if you triangulate things mathematically, which he's one of the people who does. Hoagland does that, and David Sereda. There's certain people that are tracking everything with mathematics. And the thing is that there's evidence that it's probably causing some escalation of some earth things that are happening, okay? And that's on the video with him. It's on my website. You can just do a search for Keith Hunter. It's on my Rumble channel. Now, all my videos are available on my Rumble channel, pretty much. Even after I was deleted off of YouTube, I had over 1,000 videos on there. And recently, they supposedly gave that channel back with 9 videos. So you got to understand how the situation works. But luckily, Odyssey.com has my videos, but it's not very good. It's a little slow. A lot of people don't go there. I don't know why exactly. But I'm trying to transfer all my videos now onto Rumble. So we're making good progress, and most of them are getting on there and have been on there, especially the newer ones. So just saying, but they're also located on my website where you can click over to either, okay, there are 3 channels: BitChute, Rumble, or Odyssey. So just to understand that I do have around, we tried to count them. I've had some difficulty with that for many reasons, because we've been attacked over the years, and then sometimes things disappear, but we don't know they disappear. Sometimes they reemerge. And I also have radio shows that I did on Revolution Radio for a year or two that did disappear, and then someone sent me most of them. So we have those back online. So just saying that all my videos are out there, and they are still amazing. And all of my whistleblowers, the top whistleblowers, which we call Classic Camelot, and that's on the front page of my website. You'll see it says Classic Camelot, and there's a little moving thing with boxes, and you can watch some of those there. If you don't know Classic Camelot, then you probably have no basis for understanding the rest of what I'm going to say here, other than just English, right? But what I'm trying to say is context is everything. So that's why the 20 years worth of interviews and work is still vitally important now, because it doesn't matter how you look at it. The secret space program is 10,000 years in ahead of us, okay? And that comes from several whistleblowers, not just one. And a lot of my whistleblowers, the reason I'm so sure of my data in a lot of cases is not only my intuition, which I use to determine what's true and what's false, but also whistleblowers who don't know each other over a period of time, in this case, 20 years, are saying the same things, which is uncanny. And when they come forward with a military background, they've been in the secret space program for 40 years of their life. And then they get older, they're put out to pasture, they're ignored. And that's when Camelot showed up. And we basically kind of became a place where those whistleblowers could tell their stories. And actually, in some ways, we started this whole wave of being on video and interviewing people. And so now there's a zillion people doing what I do. But they don't have these old time whistleblowers that are absolutely stellar and have impeccable references in the real world, as well as in the secret world. Okay. But they do sheep dip people. So that's something I find that people don't realize. People are sheep dipped. That means their entire background is erased. That's kind of like Wayne Willett, who works with Juan 7, his place is double so-and-so. If you don't know that story, he was sheep dipped. So it doesn't matter what they say about him. Sometimes they give him a new identity. They make him, sort of a villain, kind of like character. There's all kind of crazy stuff that goes on with this, as you might know if you watch spy movies and whatnot. So back to the subject. So anyway, what I'm saying here is that we shot a CME at it. It liked it. It distilled it and used it. And this is my take on it. The secret space program realized, because, when you shoot at something and you treat it like an enemy, then suddenly that something is going to treat you like an enemy. It's kind of like that. And so what happens is we don't know what they're doing up there. And the reason they're blocking everything is so that we don't know. Okay. Because obviously, if they're having shooting war, like sometime during the month, I think it was the month of August, everything went dark. There was no more images coming forward, even though we weren't on a shutdown. We don't know why they went dark. Okay. But they definitely did. And a lot of my information does come from the news group, especially Richard C. Hoagland, because most of the people on the news group, as I said, don't talk. Other than David Sereda, he has what you call a Substack. I have a Substack that I've had for maybe a year or two now, because at one point I couldn't even post on my own website. They were attacking me so bad. I got pissed off. I decided I'm going to make a blog. So I went and found Substack. And so since then, I've been doing articles on there, and they're quite popular. in the people that do go to Substack, which are mainly people that like to read, but you can put videos on there and everything. Anyway, David Sereda has Medium, and Avi Loeb is a scientist who was involved in the Galileo project. He's a leading Harvard scientist, and he's very well connected. He's Israeli. Isn't that a coincidence? Well, you'll understand when I say that later. But the bottom line here is that he writes a column almost every day nowadays on, 3IAtlas and the attending emerging craft and things that have started to emerge around it. So let me just delineate the different things out there. They are craft, okay, in my view, but they might be specialized craft in some cases. So there's something called lemon, okay? There's some with a double M. Don't ask me these names. Lemon, and then there's Swan, and then there's a new one called Borisov, which is V1 2025, because there was a Borisov in 2009 that was just, they said, a comet. Oumuamua is the Hawaiian craft that came before these guys, and it looked just like a rock, a very long, elongated rock, but no way was it a rock. It was definitely a craft. But maybe keep in mind that reptilians and Draco like to use the elongated shape for their craft a lot of times. So when you see that shape, you could pretty much be aware that that's run by the reptilians or the Draco. Okay. And it had, it looks like a rock because it's hiding, just like Nibiru is a, planet, but it's a planetoid, and that's their home planet and all this kind of thing, Donanaki. And that's a whole big long story. So let me explain what happened. So around the beginning, I guess it was middle of July, maybe closer to the beginning of August, I got aware, like a lot of people, that this craft had shown up in our sky. Now, the weird thing about 3IAtlas that you have to wrap your mind around is that if you know that we have UFOs visiting us every night and every day, all you have to do is put your, what do they call that? The green kind of lens on your camera, whatever, and then you can see them. Courtney Brown and his remote viewers have been teaching people how to use their cameras to see the craft. And one thing you know about the craft is that they go interdimensional. All right. Now, let me say something about the dimensions, because it's a lot of annoying stuff out there that people do not know. They think they know or something. But as far as I'm concerned, and obviously, I don't mean that people are going to agree with me, but I've spent all these years and also been educated by whistleblowers who worked with this stuff. And on top of it, I do have this very good intuition. I'm a precog. My dreams do come true. I see them right in front of me like a film strip, and so on and so forth. Which, by the way, Sebastian, I think, also does. Martin, who I did the recent free energy group. I just did a two-parter with them a few days last week, I think it was. So anyway, what I'm saying here is that I became aware of 3IAtlas through an article or something, and immediately I got a download saying that it was Anunnaki. So I started going out there and writing articles and talking about it and questioning whether it was the Wingmakers craft incoming or what. And basically, I am in direct touch with James, who created the Wingmakers. If you don't know wingmakers.com, you can search the web and see the website. He's written several books. It's quite a famous multimedia website. And he worked for the ACIO. So the ACIO, I forget what it stands for. But anyway, ACIO is a secret organization of very intelligent, who have actually enhanced their intelligence, people who are all under control of one man called 15. And anyway, James went on the run from that organization. He wrote that into a story. in the Wingmakers website in a book called The Ancient Arrow Project. The Neruda interviews in particular are part of that, and they tell the saga. So if you're interested, and it is fascinating, let me tell you, but it's about a group of androids that are supposed to be coming in our future to Earth, and that we are going to have a battle with them. And this relates to, for example, the Terminator series, if you remember that. That was harking back to Wingmakers, actually, and to that invasion. And there are other ancient sort of prophecies that have prophesied this in the past. So when 3IAtlas hit the scene, that's where I was focusing. But I got in touch with James, and I had seen that it was Anunnaki. So there was a contradiction there, because the androids are not Anunnaki that are coming. Okay, so that's a different race altogether. The androids are strictly AI. The Anunnaki are actually reptilian, Draco-reptilian, Pleiadian hybrids, humanoid hybrids. If you really want to be specific, that's who they are. They are a rogue group of Pleiadians that went on the run, settled on Nibiru. That was a craft, really, that planetoid craft, and actually got invaded by the Draco reptilians. That's why they became hybrids. Okay, and then they came to Earth to try to rule us. They didn't create us. So some of these things you guys might not agree with. That's all fine. I don't care. All I can do is tell you my point of view, okay, from my studies. And then you can do your own research. So what we're talking about is, I saw this craft. I thought got this hit that it was Anunnaki. I've been on the trail of the Anunnaki for many years in Camelot, many, many years, tracking them, paying attention when anyone mentioned the name so-and-so. And just so you don't get confused, Zechariah used Anunnaki, which I think it was the name in the Sumerian tablets, which is from heaven to earth came, which doesn't define the species. But when we talk about the species Anunnaki, we are actually talking about the beings that Zechariah Sitchin and the Sumerian tablets talk about, who were these Draco-reptilian hybrids from the Pleiades. Okay, so I know this might be maybe a bit much to handle. If you get overwhelmed or whatever, we can, I'll do questions. Anyway, it's important that you understand this, because then, just as serendipity would have it, I had already interviewed David Sereda, knew him, met him in Sedona, seen him at conferences, so and so. And somehow we reconnected, because I think I might have written to him, said, David, do you have anything on 3IAtlas? And basically he certainly did. So he is an incredible mathematician. And this is not just my point of view, this is the general consensus. And his information is pretty impeccable. And he does get downloads. He is like me. He's connected his chakras, and he does super meditations and all that kind of thing. So that enhances his work, which is much more logical than mine. Mine's kind of a much more right brain thing. His is much more left brain. So together, he started to show me mathematically what was the projected trajectory at that time of 3IAtlas, and how it was going to be going beyond the sun slightly, and then coming to Mars, close to Mars, and then it's going close. It's doing something so exceptional that Avi Loeb, a straight-ahead scientist, had to start questioning as well, because the odds that it would take a trajectory through our solar system, it's almost like on a railroad track. They have mathematically figured out exactly where it's going. Now, with the UFO, normally, doesn't matter the size. They can blink in and out of dimensions, and, in and out of our perception, like in half a second. They do not go in a straight line, okay? As you may know, if you've seen them, which I have zillions. So, and I was abducted when I was around 12. So, that whole scenario. And I wrote a book called Rebel Gene. If you're interested in my past and who I am, you can read Rebel Gene, where I talk about kind of an overview of everything I cover. So back to 3IAtlas. So what happens is its trajectory is not accidental. And there's no way that it could so completely carefully go between certain planets and go in this trajectory. And then on December 19th, still coming up, it's going to go its closest to Earth. And that is said to be like, so it's going to be like the 19th, 20th, 21st, whatever, Christmas, right? One of the things that David, who again is so brilliant, was able to figure out is all these angles that it's along its trajectory, where each time it hits a point, if you triangulate that point using mathematics, you basically get the history of Earth. It's insane. And related specifically to the Anunnaki, Egypt, and so on. And this is uncanny. So when the first, you can see I have like 4 videos with him talking about this stuff. And Jimmy Blanchett, who is a radio expert, and he does come in some of the videos. He's also tracking 3IAtlas in his own way and trying to communicate with it using radio waves, but that's another matter. So what happens is that David tracked while I was on the thing, and then he would go, okay, the next point is this place that's going to be on this date, and that date is triangulated to on Earth what happened when Jesus was born, when, what do they call that? Fatima, various things, that happened in our history. Like he covers all of it. It's all in the video. And so, but the main trajectory that he ended up seeing it going to was that it came from Nibiru, but it's a hyperdimensional Nibiru, and then Nibiru is a hyperdimensional planet. So this is the thing. Now I have pictures to go along with this, but I don't know if this thing is going to work properly for me to show you. So what the best thing I think will be is that I'll give you all the pictures, and then you can, whoever does this maybe could edit them in or just attach them so you can look at them, just so people watching this can see the pictures. But I'll try to show some of them, but I don't want to take the time here to hunt around, even though that it should work, it's not seeming to work very well. Anyway, the point being is that he has a whole chart showing you all the 9, I think it's 9 planets that we have conventionally. We have way more than that, actually, but the Secret Space Program knows that. So some of the planets have like a double, and that's a hyperdimensional double. And Richard C. Hoagland, this NASA, straight ahead, really, NASA scientist who he works with, agrees with his assessments, which is pretty amazing. And Richard C. Hoagland, in case you don't know, is famous for popularizing and his investigations of the face on Mars. So that you might know that name from many years ago. And back then I used to interview him, we're talking 10 or 15 years ago. So anyway, the point is that this trajectory, which I wish I could really show you, I'm going to just go here quickly and see. No. All right. And I've got so many pictures of 3IAtlas and all of this. And maybe I should have put it in, I guess next time I'll do it. I'll make a presentation, but here's one. Let's see if I can get this to show up. Because I know there's maybe some of you that don't know about the trajectory. Okay, now I've lost my place. Okay, here's this. Oh, God. I'm sorry, because I have this relatively new computer and things are not the way they're supposed to be. So I can't, it's not operating right. I can't, get this to show up the way it was supposed to. I have this. Okay, no, it's not going to work. Okay. So what happens is you might have seen the trajectory, it shows all the planets and the little places of the planets, and then it shows sort of a line curving across. That's the trajectory of 3IAtlas, where it entered our solar system and where it's going to leave, supposedly. But I caution people because, just because it's predictable so far does not mean you can assume it's predictable in the future. And I really get annoyed at people because they make so many assumptions based on what's going on now, that they think they know exactly what's going to happen in the future. And I don't think that something that's run by a combination, what I think of AI and the Draco reptilian Anunnaki, whether it's actually, I don't know, virtually run. In other words, whether they're on board or not. So I have seen an android that's operational in the control room, and I've seen. So I can bilocate and also whatever, I don't know how to explain it, but I can see into other dimensions sometimes, but it's like a film strip. It's very quick. So I can also leave my body when I'm wide awake, which is a really weird phenomena that started happening to me. But to say this is that on the craft, it's being operated as if it's a little train on a track, but there's no reason to assume it always was that. And this is another problem I have with even the scientific community. I mean, they're so close-minded and so unbelievably, lame, that, thank God there is a secret space program. Otherwise, humans really would be in the stone age right now. But the thing is that just because it started to come into our solar system, we were able to track it since then, which was, I think, around Jupiter. And I think it's also going to leave around Jupiter. Doesn't mean that it can't jump. Okay. So you can't assume that it doesn't have the technology to do what most UFOs do, which is jump. So go hyperdimensional and jump through a wormhole and go back to Nibiru or wherever the hell it wants to go. So there's a bunch of people out there saying, oh, it's so old. It's billions of years old. It's been on this track forever. It came from the, galactic center, and it's going to be the same forever. I mean, there's no way they can know this. They just can't know this. You can't know the name, know the mind of the Anunnaki. You can't know the mind of, AI so thoroughly that what it's going to do. Okay. Just saying. So I just caution people when you come across people that are telling you things that they think they know that's always going to be like that. It's not necessarily always going to be like that. In fact, the closer it gets to Earth, the more chances, for whatever however you like to view things, that it could do something crazy. Okay. Which is why the secret space program is paying attention to this like white on rice, why they, I believe, are now escorting it like a craft, why these other things, Swan and Lemon, showed up. And evidence about Swan and Lemon is that they appear, I know this is going to sound a little hard to take, they appear to be portals in addition to what they are. Okay, now that's not that strange. We are portals. Every planet is a portal. In other words, it's a dimensional gate. There are dimensional gates on things. Well, the funny thing about 3IAtlas, Lemon, and what's the other one called? Okay, 3IAtlas, Lemon, and Swan, is that Lemon and Swan showed up out of nowhere. So they, in essence, jumped hyperdimensionally to join it. But they're not right next to it. They're actually millions of miles away from it, but they're still in, some kind of logical proximity, if you will. Well, Richard Hoagland and others have seen what they call a square. It's like a square. It's kind of like Saturn is a square. That's a door. Okay, so Saturn is known to be a dimensional door, a gate. And so, by the way, according to Captain Mark Richards, Saturn is heavily guarded by these gaseous beings, believe it or not. This is according to his information. And I just published 2 books of 12 interviews over the span of 2 books with Captain Mark Richards on Amazon. Right now they're at 4.5 stars. Be nice if they were 5. But I have a bunch of typos, apparently. I had 2 editors, believe it or not, and neither one could catch all the typos. And I even tried to back them up, but I'm kind of terrible at that. So I'm now hiring another editor to go through again and find all the typos and things like that. But I apologize for that, okay? Because it was supposed to be perfect. I mean, I paid money to 2 editors. It should have been perfect, but it's not. So anyway, those books are available and chock full of everything to do with the secret space program. So if you're like me and you're completely obsessed with that, which I have been for these 20 years, you know, it's just like the mystery of all mysteries and the lies they tell you and the white hats versus, you know, the dark side. I mean, it's the biggest drama on earth, of course, and off earth. But some people just don't care. They want to focus on the here and now, whatever. So that's the story. Now, do I have limits? Am I too far down the road here? Because I have more to say, but I want to allow for questions.
You're good and keep it coming.
Okay, so, well, please do tell me when I'm supposed to take questions. Just, you know, I don't mind. So anyway, and I want to definitely allow time for questions because I think there's a massive amount of information that's out there, and I'm sure questions are everywhere. So when we're talking about these portals, the reason I bring those up, Swan and Lemon, is that this is downloads that I got. Okay, doesn't mean I'm right, but you can take it or leave it. I believe that craft, whatever the technology is there, could use a portal to get out of this system if they felt they were in danger, and they could jump through Lemon or Swan, because Lemon and Swan are actually bigger, believe it or not, than 3IAtlas. They're huge, almost planet size, apparently. So just wrap your mind around this, how this is, I call it, it's like a space dance. And this is one thing to be aware of also. Don't you think it's strange that all of this is going on in our skies and suddenly we know UFOs cloak themselves constantly. All the drones cloak themselves. We cloak ourselves. Cloaking technology is very, you know, everywhere. And so why wouldn't, if they really wanted to just go around our solar system doing kind of like investigating, watching us, blah, 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 they don't have to show us themselves. But instead, they're doing this whole dance. It's like having a television set, that's the way I see it, in your sky right now. So you're watching a drama go on, the bits and pieces that they'll let us see. And then, of course, there's a whole drama going on behind the scenes, which drives me crazy when they lie to you and don't show you good pictures and so on. So one thing about John Walson, which is kind of cool, is that he wouldn't show us what his space telescope can see, because like I said, he's afraid of being arrested. So, but what he did do is he looked through his telescope and then he looked at all the pictures that were coming out all over the world. And he chose the ones that he thought were closest to what he was seeing, okay? Which is probably a great way to get more accuracy in terms of what pictures are good and what aren't. So I think I should be able to get this one. I have this one here. So let me shut this down and maybe that'll help. I can, yeah. Let me see if that works. Okay, can you see that? So this is one of the original ones that John Walson approved and that Richard C. Hoagland and others approved. So they were kind of in agreement. This is actually maybe a month or two ago, where you can see that what happens is, and this was striking from the very beginning about 3IAtlas, is that it's surrounded by rings of some kind of matter, okay? It's in a protective shell. Now, one thing that they noticed, if you look at this outer shell part, is there are structures inside that. So whether they're glass structures or whether they're some kind of made of some other kind of material, we just don't know. But the bottom line is they're structures. And that this sort of envelope that it's riding around in, and the ship is in the center, obviously, is actually the envelope is gigantic. So there are different estimations of size of the actual craft, but you can't divorce the size of the craft from what it's surrounded by. And lately, they try to show you the craft, but they never show you the envelope it's in anymore, which is completely, strange and confusing. But the bottom line here is that it was photographed very carefully in numerous photographs showing these rings of matter around it that were probably, you could estimate, to be protective. Now, I said to people that, even on the list, that this could be a Dyson sphere. And Captain Mark Richards talks about Dyson spheres, and nobody will say yes or no to me, okay? Either they're afraid of me or who knows what the fuck. But the bottom line, so this is my conjecture, because based on Captain Mark Richards' testimony about what goes on in our solar system and outside our solar system, is that what you get, he even said, is a brown dwarf traveling along with a small group of planets that is encased in what is called a Dyson sphere. And that sphere is protective. And in theory, us and our solar system might be in a Dyson sphere as well, just to put that, in your mind. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about very strange happenings here. And now the most recent information out there about 3IAtlas is that it spouted these 7 jets of what? They don't say water. I don't think they've said exactly what material that is. So it's some form of dense air, some gaseous something, whatever it is, but they're all, they can be triangulated, and they're all very carefully positioned around this planetoid or planet, whatever, but which is actually not a planet, but a craft. So if you understand how bizarre that is, it's kind of insane for people to go around going, oh, it's a comet. And everyone knows it's not a comet at this point. One of the things that came out of it as it got close to the sun, supposedly, was a tail that went the wrong way, but it had nickel. So they were able to tell that it was mainly made up of nickel, which is an element, a metal, but that it doesn't, normally that's not what a comet has. Usually it has that sort of ice thing that they say. And to be honest, as far as I'm concerned, I think a lot of the sort of scientific history around comets is probably made up of lies. So the scientific community boasts itself as being experts on comets, when in reality, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm sorry. And I think there was a scientist called McKinney, if I got his last name right, who actually attacked their comet theories. And he was quite brilliant. He wrote a book. Sorry, I don't have the name of it in front of me, but if you followed this since the 20 years I have, he was quite well known for a while in the alternative sector. So just saying, take a look at that and understand why, if it was hit by a CME directly, by the way, it didn't burn it up or dissolve it or whatever you want to call it. You see what I'm saying? So there's lots of anomalies going on with this craft that certify that this is artificial, that it's on a timeline, that it came according to a timeline that David Sereda can show you mathematically, totally borrows from our history. Okay, like incredibly. And it also, if you listen to the interviews I did with David, those first 4 in the early days, it's signaling through the chosen incidents that are chosen by the mathematical configurations that it has the mentality of the Anunnaki, which is, a lot of people maybe haven't followed this, but Anu, who is the so-called king, god, whatever, 2 sons, Enki and Enlil. Some people disagree on Enlil was the good guy, Enki was the good guy. Enki was a master geneticist. We know that much. He is actually the one who went down to Africa, who created, they put both of them put in a frequency fence in our brains at this time. And I am really bad with numbers, so I'm not even going to try to tell you what year that was, but it goes back, way longer than most people think the solar system, our Earth exists and all that stuff. And by the way, one of my key sources for my information about everything is also Ashiana Dean. Her books called Voyagers. They're on the front page of my Project Camelot website. You can buy them for $20 each. They're ebooks. And I interviewed her for 6 hours. So I spent a lot of time with her and her group then. And then I actually flew to India with them and went on a tour of India with them. And on that tour, I started getting downloads of what she was going to say before she said it. I know it sounds weird, but I apparently am in touch with those, what are called the guardian races, that actually downloaded the books. She didn't write the books. She was taking dictation, if you want to. But she had to be a vessel that was high frequency enough to get this very sophisticated information. And if you read the books, lots of people have trouble even deciphering them. They're so complex. But I've read them several times. From the first time I stumbled on her website, which is back when I was working at Jet Propulsion Lab on my lunch hours and free time, of which I had a lot of eventually, then I knew, it's one of those things. I see something, I hear something, I meet someone, and I get a download, and it just tells me stuff about it. So I knew immediately that her information, I know this is going to sound maybe wild. Some people won't think it's wild, but I just knew her information was right. And then I read her books and interviewed her and went on travel with her. And, even during, we were creating some actual vortexes, you could say, so there's what's called wormholes, vortexes, and stargates. A stargate is a man-made construction around either the entrance to a wormhole or just a vortex. So, which is a doorway, which is a gate into other dimensions. Now, we are multidimensional. So having a hyperdimensional solar system, which David is his theory, is correct, but it's limited in my estimation, because everything is multidimensional. Everything has more than one, like you could say your double, your avatar, whatever, is in multidimensionals dimensions simultaneously with being in this one. Okay. So you're not just here. You're not your body, all that stuff. And I'm assuming most of you guys know this. So, okay. Getting back to 3IAtlas again, because this is the focus. Now, understanding what they're doing. So they are making sure they are seen. They're making sure that the humans, the sweet little humans, will track their trajectory, will get, the link ups to Jesus's birth and all these religious holidays and so on and so forth, which I'm not very religious. Well, I'm not religious at all. I'm spiritual, but don't get me started on that. In the Catholic Church, run by the reptilians and so on. So I'll definitely go on a tangent on that if you want me to, but I'm sure that maybe this is not the focus for today. So what I'm saying here is that understanding how wily, in a certain sense, this thing is put together, that it comes in right at the time, perfect timing, when we're just about to have some kind of disclosure that's better than what we have had, supposedly. And that the dark side in particular. So I have a theory about, we have Anunnaki, okay, Bob Dean, one of my highest and best whistleblowers, who's passed on sadly, but I've done dozens of interviews with him. He says I made him a rock star. He was a really amazing whistleblower. And they probably killed his daughter as a result. Clifford Stone, another amazing whistleblower, they killed his son. This is what they do to whistleblowers, okay? So don't think they have a free ride. But nonetheless, so he said, quote, in one of my interviews, the Anunnaki are walking the halls of the Pentagon. And he said that back in like 2010 or even earlier. So that was like right on the money as far as what I was searching and investigating, for him to say that out of the blue, And so what happens is understanding that Anunnaki have been able to occupy human bodies and come onto this earth. Now, I don't know if their occupation of the human body is for the life of the body. It may be the kind of thing where they push the occupant to the side, which does happen, and take it over for the life of the vehicle, so to speak, or whether they actually are able to somehow manufacture a human body to occupy that is human size, is what I'm trying to say. Because the Anunnaki are actually, generally speaking, 9 feet tall. And by the way, their primary base on Earth is Israel at Dimona, the area around Dimona where their nuclear plant is. Okay. And I have this from several whistleblowers, and I've been investigating this, as I say, for close to 20 years. So I know that my information is correct in that regard. And this is, again, why you have this incredible, aggressive, insane Israel going around and trying to, genocide the Palestinians next door, because that's the personality of the Anunnaki. Now, Anu is written into the Bible as God. He wanted humans, to worship him, and he was a vindictive, horrible, person, but maybe had some nice qualities too. They're kind of like humans, Anunnaki. They are a lot like us in terms of having that emotional range of, good to bad and all that stuff. Well, anyway, so Anu is the God of the Bible. That's how I see it. That's how the people from ACIO, for example, see it. I realize regular Bible people don't see it like that, whatever. And the thing is that a lot of the Bible stories are like for children to understand genetic engineering of the human race. So he didn't have literal sex with the human women because he was 9 feet tall. Do the math. Okay. What I'm saying here is he genetically inserted his DNA into a certain part of the human race, which I call the ones with the rebel gene. Now, in theory, we all have access to the rebel gene, but there is cut off. The ones who were in the Middle East, a lot of those were under Enlil, who did not want humans to have any freedom. And so they were basically raised to follow orders, and they get jobs, not just Middle Easterners, but this is a sort of metaphor for around the world. The administrative type jobs, people that follow orders of the man, right? The ones that are so annoying that do that kind of thing, right? Kiss asses, so-and-so. Yes, people, whatever. So the rebels were the ones that Enki encouraged by putting his own DNA in there and let them have relative freedom, okay, in Africa. So Enlil was in charge of the Middle East, Enki of Africa back in the day. And yes, humans dug for gold. The reason, now this is a key thing that a lot of people don't know about Nibiru, going interdimensional, and the fact that David Sereda is actually right about going interdimensional. And you know how that we used to say, oh, you can see Nibiru, it's about to come here, it's going to emerge next to this planet or that planet or wherever it's coming in. Well, the thing is that they weren't necessarily wrong. They just didn't understand that it could go interdimensional. So sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. And gold is known in space travel, and this is general knowledge really in, real scientists who come from secret space program or close to it, understand that gold is used in space travel, and it has properties, real gold, that allows you to go interdimensional. So the gold dust that they had humans dig for, in theory, was taken off planet to go into their atmosphere and to help Nibiru to stay interdimensional, because otherwise Nibiru would drop into 3D and always be visible. And obviously that put them in a vulnerable position. So they don't want to do that. So that's what happened there. This is what I do a lot of times is I connect the dots. I get so much information, and pretty soon one thing, reveals the other thing, reveals the next thing in ways that are not conventional. I understand that. And a lot of my colleagues would probably disagree with me on so many things, but that's their problem. So now I want to make sure that I'm really giving you a picture now. So what we have out there on our little TV, and again, understanding that, this solar system is gigantic, obviously. We think it's gigantic, but beyond it is even more gigantic, and so on and so forth, right? And there are billions of Earth-like planets, by the way, according to scientists, even mainstream scientists will tell you that, where there are humanoid races. So we're not the only image of God out there and all this kind of nonsense, all right? So this self-centered, egotistical view of reality that was sold to humans that maybe didn't know any better back in the days of especially, Egypt and the priest caste. And I lead tours of Egypt, which are a lot of fun. My partner, Maria Wheatley, in that endeavor, she is a wonderful, she's a Druid, comes from a Druid line, and she also, her father was the dowser for the queen. And so she is an expert on Stonehenge and various stone circles around the world. And she and I lead this tour. She comes from a completely different direction than I do, but putting us together with also the conventional guide. We always have a guide. You have to, it's a law. A conventional guide who we push around a lot and get away with murder, because I know the owner of the company and he used to be my guide on trips to Egypt years ago. So we maintained this very interesting connection, and therefore we get a lot of access to Egypt that other companies and humans don't get. Okay, so back to 3IAtlas. So this is so interesting that when David Sereda did his triangulation of these jets, these 7 jets, 7, perfect number, right? He found that all these configurations lead to the Great Pyramids on the Giza Plateau, that they're in the exact same correlation. So, go figure. If you don't think it's Anunnaki, I'm sorry for you. And let me just say this, okay? There's rumors, and we talked about this in the FESIG, the free energy thing I just did. And I'm posted part 1 and part 2 on my Rumble channel just last night. So you can also go there to watch it now. But I was on there with Jean-Charles Moyen, who's also quite brilliant. And I guess he's, intuitive, remote viewer, or whatever you want to call him, sort of an unconventional French guy. And Sebastian Martin, who I've interviewed. I was one of the first to ever interview back in something like 2007 or whenever it was. And he is a psychic intuitive who, for some reason, the CIA got interested in and sort of brought him on board periodically to decipher certain things on his, give him feedback on a psychic level. I don't think he's necessarily employed by them. I think he pitch hits for them on occasion. He's supposed to come back on my show and talk more about 3IAtlas, because the show we did with the Free Energy Group, basically, we had already talked ahead of time, but we found that a lot of our conclusions on 3IAtlas, I didn't know about his, he didn't know about mine in theory, but they correlated. So for what it's worth, all right, just saying. Now, I know there's a whole group of people out there who want to believe that this 3IAtlas is going to help them ascend, and going to, maybe there's 2 sides of this story that goes. One side thinks that star seeds, we're all star seeds just FYI. Star seeds are going to be rescued from Earth and taken somewhere. Okay, well, that's a real diabolical Z scenario or V scenario that, reptilians are going to do that with you. Yeah, right. Or the other side of that is they're going to steal their souls. So they're only coming to Earth to steal the souls of the star seeds, who are supposedly born between X number of years and other number of years. Got to remember that time is a complete illusion. And when you're born on Earth is not who you are. It's just part of who you are. Okay. So just saying, let's try to have a more open mind towards the world and humans. It will help, I think, in the long run, if people stop latching on to these egotistical fairy stories that make them feel good. Okay. Because it's not what's happening if you follow the evidence at any rate. So the Anunnaki unequivocally wanted to be seen as rulers, as I say, and Anu is very famous for having taken the role of God in the Bible and theoretically is the God of the Bible. In other words, the creator that they're supposed to be talking about is not really being talked about. And the whole Bible was rewritten by the Council of Nicaea, and those are a bunch of white men who do what a bunch of white men normally do, which is, oppress others and steer everything in a direction they want it to go, as far as I'm concerned. So, take your pick. You want to interpret it one way or another, and it makes you feel good or sleep at night, whatever, that's fine. I do believe in Jesus as an avatar, a high level being, but he's not coming back. He did a good enough job the first time. He doesn't have to come back and do any kind of nonsense. And the other thing is that, according to the Ashiana Dean books, there were 3 actual Christs. One was like a lower level Christ, one was a 6th dimensional, and one was 9. So, and then they got put into the Bible as one person, a composite character, the way authors often do with stories. So I realize, again, the audience may not appreciate it. Some people may love it. Some people hate it. It's in the Ashiana Dean Voyager books. Highly recommend you read those. They're much more explicit than the Bible or anything else out there, even the raw material, which I've also read, which, by the way, the raw material misleads people as well. Because I read the raw material and I began to ask questions because they weren't covering certain things for certain topics, especially about, ETs. And I was like, what the hell? This is supposed to be the definitive, David Wilcock loves the raw material, all that. And I know David very well, so don't get me wrong. I love David, but I don't agree with him on a lot of things. So this is where we go. This is the ground that we're covering here on Earth right now. And I think this should be a good time to take questions.
Okay, yeah, it sounds great. And Kerry, wow, thank you. You've just given us a huge amount of really amazing information. It's a good thing we're recording this because I know many of us will want to go back and listen again. So, Sue, I will take turns asking questions, and we'll ask as many questions as we can here. So some of these you have already covered. So let's start with, could you speak about the relationship between the 3IAtlas and the Hopi Blue Star prophecy, please?
Okay. So I understand about that. However, I just want to warn people that a lot of these prophecies have been prophesied over and over again for various incidents. So this is the newest rendition of what they want to say was a Kachina, the blue Kachina. However, the trouble with that, and this is probably maybe going to go against grain about some people, but I have met with Hopi directly, and they have told me that the god of the Hopi is a reptilian. All right. So, I know people love to say, oh, the indigenous people, they're just so smart and they know everything. Not really. They actually know a lot from their reptilian masters. And this guy said the reptilians, they actually, obey them. So this is going down through history. Okay. Now, I don't know if somebody wants to go crazy over that, but that's what I was told by some inside story of real Hopi. And there are other, indigenous, Navajo, the various, and I love indigenous people, don't get me wrong. I love, they're related to the Maya and the Inca and all of this. So the races in northern in the U.S. are related to the original Maya and Incas and so on and so forth. So there are actually genetic connections between these races. But so back to the Kachina, I understand they could be saying that, even if they are, so what? Is kind of my attitude. But, I know that there's a whole package that goes along with that. It's prophesying the end of the world or whatever the hell, and I have been down that road and back about 20 million times since I started Camelot. So it's worth knowing that, in fact, it's kind of like clockwork. Every fall, all of these things come back around and people start doing prophecies of doom for what's coming. Okay. And it happens every single year like clockwork. In October and November are their favorite months for prophesying death and destruction for humanity. So I don't buy into a lot of that. I do think, I think Nostradamus had some good prophecies. I think he was off base on certain things and very good on others. But I also think that, we live in what's called a fractal universe or multiverse, so that every little piece of the whole reflects the whole. And this is also why David's mathematics work and correspond to these certain religious holidays, etc. But what it does tell you is that that craft is communicating with us, and it's trying to communicate with us from a certain time period, on Earth back in time. And it is also, again, relating it from the point of view of what appears to be the Anunnaki and history from that point of view, because we existed before that time. Okay. Like I said, they didn't create us, and that we come from Lyra, the Lyra constellation, actually humanoid. It's like us, can't come from there. And the human is a group that is is supposedly called experimental group. That is a composite of many races. Okay. And has been hybridized. Even as we first came here, we were already being hybridized by different races, visiting races. And that's one of the Oceanidine books that goes through every single hybridization that happened throughout the millennium to humans. That's since we got to Earth, not just saying from other times, because Lyra was also invaded and various things like that. So one thing that you could say about all of the hybridization is that Source, the creator, whatever, wants to create a multidimensional being that contains everything from every other race. Like they want to make this, it's in the Wingmakers material. Like they're saying this version of humanity is going to merge with 7 different races, so that the next version of humanity will have all those genetics of those 7 races. Okay. That's something in the Wingmaker material for what it's worth. And I know I kind of jumped around a little bit, but hope that helps with that question.
That was fascinating. And I have to say, you've given us a whole bibliography of places to go researching, and I really, really appreciate that. So I'm sorry, I'm not reading one of the questions from the thing. I'm asking you one. From the mathematics from David, which I love that that's giving you an insight, plus your own dreams and your own remote viewing and stuff, do you have an official or unofficial, like a prediction or a view of what you expect to unfold as we move closer to December 19th and beyond? Like,
I do, but it's not so focused on December 19th so
Okay.
far. Now, I could get a vision tomorrow that will show me something, but at one point during the trajectory of 3IAtlas, right around the time when it was actually shot by the CME, a little before that, I had a vision. I was actually studying it on my computer, and then I fell asleep in a short nap. And I saw that they were pushing 3IAtlas out of our solar system. And they were using what Mark Richards had talked about, which is the energy from neutron stars that we do have access to, and pushing it into a portal and out of this particular dimension, 3D going into 4D. So whether that's ever going to happen, I don't know. I do know that that's just something I saw. Maybe it was a possible future for 3IAtlas at the time. Maybe that changed. Maybe the CME was part of that effort, but it didn't work, so on and so forth. So, we're on a moving trajectory. And that's something that even remote viewers have to deal with, which is, and I've studied remote viewing, even with Ed Dames all those years ago, where I did some accurate remote viewing of Mars and these little mechanical creatures that I saw on Mars, which I had no idea about, and so on. So I have done these things, but I don't isolate myself I don't consider myself a remote viewer in the, strict sense of the word, because my psychic abilities, have come over time, and they dictate where I go and what I see, really much more than, saying, oh, I'm going to remote view this and I'm going to draw this I don't draw pictures and all that kind of stuff. So I'm much more fluid than that. And, I like it that way. Whether people like it the other way. I do watch the remote viewers, though, because I like to watch the remote viewers to see how accurate they are, actually, by sort of watching and seeing what they omit, because I do have issues with remote viewing in general, where I think that they are not being, how do I put it? First of all, they're close to the ones, like Courtney's remote viewers, and in particular, ones that used to be Courtney's remote viewers, like Dick Algeier and the rest, who are in future forecasting group, Daz Smith. I've actually interviewed these people over the years. And I am aware they are very closely watched by the government because they used to work for the government. Okay. And maybe they still do behind the scenes occasionally, whatever. So I'm just saying, that's not just a simple story. And those people hold back information all the time. That's my impression. Okay. They may say I'm wrong and, everything else. I do know that they've had some people as guests on the future forecasting group, but they stay clear away from me, even though they know I'm a member. So this is a syndrome that happens all the time with me, because I don't play, maybe I don't play fair, but I definitely don't, stay in the boundaries. Okay. I cross the lines constantly and I question everything. So,
well, and I think you did a really good job of some of the fear-based stuff that's coming out in the different reports, and some of the, oh, it's going to change humanity, oh, we're going to ascend, oh, we're going to whatever. And I was just curious if you have, not remote viewing then, gut sense, psychic sense, any sense of this as a positive or a negative or an interesting or a...
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. First of all, I'm a precog, as I've said, and I've had dreams. So what I did was I was in my 20s. I was living in New York City, studying acting and directing, and I would go into meditations, long meditations. And I eventually connected all my chakras purposefully, reached a samadhi, and I have had multiple samadhi experiences since then. As far as I'm concerned, enlightenment is a journey, not a destination. So once you go towards it, you keep expanding and learning more. And that's the way I find it to be. So back since then, it amplified what I already had as a child, which was, sort of psychic and awareness of secrets and all this kind of thing. I can read a person. I can even tell you diseases they have or things like that. I don't like to go down that road, so I didn't go down that road, but I can do it. I had one very graphic experience when I was living in Soho in New York and doing my meditations, all that stuff. For a short time, I stayed with, I think it was 2 women in a loft. And one day I was really tired, so I laid down, and then I got bombarded by like ridiculous amount of information about these two women on a personal level, on every other level. And I was just like, oh my God, because I didn't want to know that stuff. And if you have to live with people, you don't want to really know everything like that. And it was too much. And I think I really freaked out. I was young, I was quite young then, like 27 or whatever it was. And I think I just, really veered away from that since then. I have done some other experiences where I have been accurate, and I have read people when it was an important situation, so on and so forth. And that, so everyone has this. Okay. Everyone can do any of these things. It's not special, but it is, you have to, experience it, and you have to test yourself. And you also have to be very, I tend to, I don't know why it is, but I don't like to see things that I prefer, because I don't need that. Okay. As a being, I'm here for the experience. So I'm not going to name names here, but certain of my colleagues have futures they want to see. Well, the minute you put an overlay on information incoming of what you want, you start to get rid of the stuff you don't want. But that's not seeing the truth. For me, I want the truth. That's all I care about. I really just want to see the truth of beingness, of life, of everything we have here and not here. So I don't put a lid on stuff, right? And I entertain the negative and positive. I see this as a yin yang multiverse. I do not see us, the needle right now is kind of leaning towards the right. I mean, not the right, but the dark side. And I believe we're trying to bring it back to balance. That's what we're trying to do here on Earth, in every way. And I don't see that we're going to eliminate all the darkness and we're going to live in light and fairyland again and all that stuff, and eat bonbons in heaven and all that nonsense. So that's where I'm coming from. So I don't shirk away from the negative. I actually find the negative to be very challenging and very energizing. Okay. I don't like it. Okay. I don't also like things that happen to me that are negative. Like yesterday, I had a horrendous day of attacks, but I embrace the good and the bad. I studied Nietzsche when I was in college, and other philosophers. I really wanted to understand everything. And little did I know I'd actually get a lot more than I expected along those lines. I still don't know everything, obviously, but I do see the future. I have seen a very good future for the white hats and us in the United States, for example. I believe that future is still going to happen, although it seems like the timeline's being messed with right now. So I don't know if it's, on or off necessarily, but I do have, predictive stuff. One time I tell this story, it's kind of boring, but I was living in Hollywood. I was very young. Had just moved to Hollywood to study acting and directing there after New York. And I went into a meditation, and I basically said, okay, so two things happened. So I saw that my car was towed. And I woke up in the morning and I said, oh no, my car, that's not going to be happening. It's going to be fine. I'll go out in the street and my car will be there. So I went on the street, and lo and behold, it was fucking towed. So, so I've had that kind of stuff happen to me. I also, back then, same period of time, I went into deep meditation on the weekend, I think, or whatever. And so, I'm sitting literally Indian style on my bed. And all of a sudden I tapped into the interdimensional space, and I saw a shakar, the winged dragon, which is the Draco Anunnaki flying by me. Now, I didn't believe in them back then. I actually thought the movies like V, the early version, were not true, and they were just using reptilians as a metaphor. That's what I thought. But I found out I was wrong, and that they really are real, and that being had consciousness. He wanted me to see it, and I saw it, and it was going to hurt me, but it flew right by me, and unequivocally, from then on, I knew this fucking shit was real. So, in answer to your question about prophecies and what do I see and all that. So I am not a doomer and gloomer, even though I talk about the negative. I think we need to expose the negative. I think that's the best thing to do. And so I don't like to have to talk about, love and light. I think love and light gets all the notice it needs. I mean, actually, when things are fine, things are fine. What's there to talk about? But when you have dreadful things going on, like the oppression of most of humanity on Earth, the blindness, the lack of enlightenment in essence, I think that it's our job to reverse that. And
do you feel like 3IAtlas will affect humanity's ability to have enlightenment or a higher spiritual experience or whatever? Since that's what a lot of people are saying.
Absolutely not. However, let me put that in context. Everything that happens to humanity is on the road to enlightenment. So it's no different in that respect. And I know there's some people out there that are also saying, oh, you're going to see in 3IAtlas what's in you. So you're reflected. If you're a high level frequency being, you're going to see lovely things. And if you're a low level, you're going to see bad things. Fuck that bullshit. Okay. The fact of the matter is that's true of everything in life. Okay. How you see it is how you are. If you want to screen out one thing, it doesn't make you a better being. Okay. That's bullshit. Okay. So the ones that want you to only see love and light, that's a Christian overlay. That is a lie. Okay. I'm sorry to say to all the nice little Christians out there, but that's not what's happening here. Okay. We're part of a yin and yang multiverse, and it is a multiverse, and we do have dimensions, and we also have densities. So the dimensions tend to go horizontal, and the densities are viewed, this is more of a metaphor, as vertical. And that's the cross. Hello. And at the center is where they connect. And so that's where we live, is at the center.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kerry. So I'm going to piece together just a few more questions. I know we've gone past, but I'll also mention there is a lot of gratitude and love for you in the chat, and really great appreciation for everything that you've talked about here.
Okay.
Well, thank you. There's still, I'll lump together a series of questions on 3IAtlas, because there's still the people are looking for a little bit more with regard to intent.
There's tons. Yeah, for sure.
So here's someone asked bottom line, good or bad, and someone else asked about the specific intent as to why it's here, which you did touch on some. And someone else asked about, is it possible that they want to influence world politics or something else on the planet? So I'll kind of give you all of that to touch on.
Okay, so this is interesting, in the sense of the Anunnaki, as far as I'm concerned, because it's no accident that we also have this big focus right now on Israel and what's going on in Israel, where there'll be peace or not in the Middle East, and so on and so forth. So it seems that the Anunnaki, okay, let me explain this. Everyone, according to the genetics of the guardians talking about humanity, since the Anunnaki came here, we all have some Anunnaki genes in our makeup. But the Israelis have a larger amount, which is why they're favored by the Anunnaki, who, again, are not balanced, enlightened beings, but are, basically vindictive and very much like lower level, emotions and so on. And let me say this about the Anunnaki also. There are probably some more enlightened Anunnaki running around now, and in the universe, multiverse, right? They're not all as diabolical as Anu, and I mean, Marduk was a nightmare. Okay, so Marduk was the child of Enki, and he turned out to be the negative side, and he was one who ruled over Mars. And there's reason to believe that actually the ship that Sebastian said he saw these whole rows of soldiers that were reptilian, Draco-reptilian soldiers that were in stasis. Now, Andy Lloyd years ago wrote a book called, I think it was called The Dark Star. And I interviewed him dozens of times. I read his books. He had a fictional version of those books that talked about Marduk and the return of Marduk, and on a ship. And he lives very close to GCHQ, and he got super paranoid. So he stopped that series. I think you can still get 2 of the books, but he was supposed to write 3. I forget, what the trip. I have been in touch with him, but he's so locked down at this point, he won't even talk. So I guess he got threatened or something. But the bottom line is that he was right on as far as I was concerned about the return of Marduk. Now, and there are some other things where Marduk already might have come back and stasis and so on and so forth. And there are also giants in stasis here buried around the earth that Hugh Newman and his colleagues have investigated, written books about. The Smithsonian hides them. There's just so many stories to do with all of this. So, and those are not Anunnaki, those are giants, but that's another, species that was walking the earth for a time and all that. Okay, so back to the situation. What I see is that this is some kind of test. Okay, so so James of the Wingmakers, I got back in touch with him like about 6 months ago. I tried to get the Wingmakers movie off the ground. Once again, I owned the rights years and years ago when I was working in Hollywood. I didn't get it off the ground then, although I shopped it to some of the major people like Spielberg, who already knew about it, and Kathleen Kennedy, who worked for him. I got it to James Cameron. I got it to Ridley Scott. And they all rejected it because I wasn't part of the old boys network and I didn't have a bunch of actors already attached and all the blah, blah that goes on in Hollywood. But it's a fabulous story that needs to be made into a movie. And I'd like to make the movie to this day. But instead, while I was off doing Camelot for the last 20 years after I met James and had the rights to do for 1 year, apparently, according to them, I thought I had the rights in perpetuity, and that's a whole nother matter. So I contacted him about 3IAtlas, as I said, and I said, this could be, I kept nagging him and saying, this could be, a precursor or something to do with the coming android invasion. What do you think? And basically, he finally said, it's not it, but it is some, step. Like he's very careful. So, this is the trouble I deal with in life and in, everyday investigations. The people I try to talk to don't like to give me a straight answer because they're under security oaths, right? So I have to interpret their answers. It's kind of like Deep Throat, in the Watergate saga that apparently was also a lie, but nonetheless, Deep Throat, who gives you a question to answer a question or whatever it is. So, but it was enough for me to say, okay, 3IAtlas is not the android. And actually, when I remote viewed it, like I said, I got that it was Anunnaki. So it's a step. This is what's happening, okay? I didn't design it, obviously, but I am reading it, okay, the way you would read a book. And I see this is a chapter. This is one of the first chapters that is getting all eyes on Earth to look towards disclosure, not Project Bluebeam, blah, blah, blah. That's another thing, which is actually a real plan that Randy Kramer outed and that I put out there, which hasn't happened yet, by the way, and could still happen, but it may not be this. It may be another version of what's coming. But the bottom line is that, yes, 3IAtlas is on a trajectory. It was put there. In fact, I believe it's very possible it was called here by the Anunnaki on Earth because they want a distraction to what's happening in the war between the white hats and the dark side, and the fact that it's getting closer and closer to D-Day in a sense, and also the change in the financial system, which has everything to do with everything that's happening, because that'll change everything on Earth, as you can appreciate. And then the free energy thing, and I made recently, was in New York City and Long Island, and we made me and my sometimes partner, Neil, made a video about Tesla. We went to the Tesla site where Wardenclyffe was operational, and he built it there. It's a giant, I think it's 187 feet tower. Maybe I have that wrong. Anyway, I'm terrible with numbers, but you get the idea. And they took it down and so forth since he died. But the thing is that that's a fascinating video where I was giving a speech. So I intercutted my speech from that conference, which was called the New York Awakening Conference, and our trip to the site of what was supposed to be what I thought was, through a vision I had, the Tesla Museum. But the Tesla Museum I saw in my vision doesn't exist yet. What exists is a derelict site with broken down buildings that are crumbling, cement that's all broken, some trees in a forest, barbed wire all around it, a statue of Tesla. I mean, it's just a hodgepodge of stuff. But no doubt the plans are, and I think we might have even kickstarted the plans by focusing on it and going there physically, a group of us, to actually get the focus on Tesla once again back in history and free energy and bring that to the people and so on and so forth. So how did I get here? Well, I'm just talking about how these are steps. You know, this isn't, okay, so what is time and what is space? So we see it as rolling out in front of us, one thing after another in a linear fashion. But if you know, even Hopi know this, that time and space are one, that everything is happening simultaneously, but we just, because of the structure of our brains, see things happening one after the other. So yes, it's a step. It's not the step. It's not the only step. In fact, whether it actually does anything beyond what it's already done, I have not known. I don't know what the hell it's going to do, but it may do nothing. Okay. And the thing is that Sebastian, when he said he saw these in stasis soldiers on board, I said, that's not what you, for what it's worth, I said, that's not what you're seeing. What you're actually seeing are like, he said he saw these columns and that they were laying down in a vertical, in a linear fashion, the bodies of the soldiers. And I said, what you're actually seeing is a projected film coming from the headquarters of the 3IAtlas in those sections to make you think their bodies are on board, but actually what they are actually showing you is like a threat, that's what they're capable of, that's what they have access to, and that's what may come in the future. But I don't believe they're aboard literally right this second. That's just, now he may not agree with me completely. He kind of listened to me, but he may see it differently. Okay. But that's what I saw. And, you got to understand that these beings, whenever they're, ETs or whatever they are, even like humans, they're tricksters. They will do stuff to deceive you. And, that's a guarantee. So make up your own mind. You have to use your intuition. It's a good exercise, because you can come to some guesswork conclusion or whatever you think you see. And then if you write it down or you keep track of it, and then you go into the next time when you saw that, and then it doesn't happen the way you thought you saw it. This is how I learned to rely on my intuition, psychic senses, all that stuff, is I kept testing myself to see, was I right or was I wrong? If I was wrong, where was I wrong? For example, I saw Trump winning the election in what was it? I think it was the one that got stolen, 2020. But what I actually saw was the one he won in 2024, I guess it was, right? So my interpretation, in other words, my psychic vision was correct. I just didn't realize. And the reason what I saw it was linked in time. I saw all the illegal aliens leaving on a highway with all their personal belongings, leaving our country. That didn't happen, the push for that, until 2024. So it wasn't happening like that in 2020. And, there was the fake win of the fake Biden and the whole thing went on. So that's like how it is. Sometimes you get it right, but you interpret it wrong. That's kind of funny, but it's true.
Thank you so much, Kerry.
Don't cut off yet.
Do you have something very quick?
It is. Well, because she mentioned that, she sees the white hat and humanity like a good future for us, but that there's something messing with the timeline. I just wondered if you would speak into that little spot for a moment before Chris cuts us off.
Okay. I have seen, and this is years ago, I saw I guess back then the white hats didn't even exist really as a thing per se. But when I had this set of dreams, so my dreams are, I can either go into a vision and bilocate, or I can have dreams or downloads. So I have like 3 different things going on, I guess you might say. But anyway, in my dreams, I try to keep track of them. And this goes back many, many years. But this was not that long ago that I did see that the white hats are going to be successful to a point, and they're not going to be. It's not for eternity. Okay, it's going to help us. We're going to go a step up with their agenda, and we're going to have like celebrations, parties, things like that. But there's another side to that, which I've also seen, that Trump and the white hat military are going to be bombing Hawaii. Okay. And I'm upset about it in this dream. I'm in an underground base that probably is NORAD with a bunch of soldier type people. I'm the right hand of some commander type person. I don't know if this is just me, like seeing a vision of the future of someone else through their eyes that you can do, or me literally, but it was like it was me. And I was realizing that even then they weren't telling the soldiers they're going to be bombing a bunch of undersea under Hawaii base. That's huge and is real even now, because we are infested by, of course, there are good ETs and, extra dimensionals and inner earth cultures. Okay. And by the way, the inner earth cultures are now talking to us, and they did communicate with the white hats for what it's worth. So anyway, that was the good side. Okay. But they are going to be bombing Hawaii. Now, I am concerned about the ecosystem of Hawaii and, of course, the humans. And I am rather concerned, upset about it, whatever you want to say. But I'm not in charge or anything. But I know the real truth, and the troops don't know the real truth. Okay. Even then. And this is sometime in our future. It's not very far in our future. It's getting closer all the time. So I saw that in the future also with the white hats, which means we're still at war with the aliens that are trying to take over our planet. We are being invaded. We have constantly throughout history been invaded. That's how we got genetically re-engineered all these times. And not all of us, there are portions of humanity that we're focused on by different races. That's why we look all different. That's why sometimes we get along with people. Sometimes you hate somebody on sight. All those reasons is because we are all a very complex melting pot of races that have come here, by the way, incarnating into our bodies as hybrids to see if those races can finally get along, because they don't get along in their pure strains out there in the multiverse. You understand what I'm saying? And the Guardians know this. So at least according to Ashiana Dean, and that actually made total logical sense when she said that, that this so-called experiment, they like to call it an experiment, but it's going on all over the multiverse. That a lot of times this is kind of part of the reason why we get, I even say nowadays, I say war is actually all about merging races. So we're having wars with those races that we don't get along with. And what ends up happening is the women get raped, they have children from the enemy, then pretty soon they're all the same group of races with the same hybrids. Just think about it. If you just go like how that's gone on in history, and we're merging with different species all the time in different forms and fashions, and also just ideologically, if you will, right? So this is a purpose within, put it under the category of how the creator gets to know itself, you know what I mean? In every permutation possible, because that's what the game's all about. The game is self-knowledge.
Thank you so much. You have a very broad outlook and approach, and it's refreshing. And I'm guessing, do you want to do the final whatever, Chris?
Yeah, so just I echo what Sue said. A lot of ground here. I answered many questions. Really appreciate you sharing all of your various perspectives with us, and coming back here. I did want to share with you, you're one of our most popular CC Worldwide Voices guest speaker. And so there'll be thousands of people who watch the video recording, thousands and thousands. So thank you for being with us here today. Thank you everyone for joining this session today. And we will see you next time.